Hey everyone, welcome back to Crypto Cash. Thank you so much again for joining me here. Hope you're having a fantastic day. I'm trying to have a better day. Yesterday was probably the worst day almost ever. I had to take my son to the emergency room for a dog bite on his forehead from a dog that I've owned for 12 and a half years, my best friend. So I'm probably gonna have to get rid of him. It's just kind of one of those really terrible, unfortunate things. And I have a really deep connection with this dog specifically, but animals in general. So it's a tough one. So I apologize and thank you again for the understanding and obviously the wonderful support. Feel free to keep me and our family in your thoughts and prayers moving forward. Our son is doing okay, by the way. So that's the most important thing, of course. He's not in dire straits, but it's really difficult to watch your 8-month-old son have get stitches and all sorts of just have to bring him to the hospital sucks really bad. So anyways, conversation for another day, but thank you again for the wonderful support. Down below, we're going to kind of look here at these buying order blocks as well as sell order blocks, kind of try to identify key level supports and resistances. There's a lot of little patterns forming here too on the different altcoins we're going to be planning to look at. The Gaussian channel here is telling us we have pretty good support. We have some confluence letting us know this current range is still in decent shape. So obviously we're going to look at that and a few other key factors here too with liquidation maps, both with 1 day and macro timeframes too, to get perspective on what's going on. So be sure to stick around. We do got an important one here today. Let's take a closer look. All right, folks, before we jump into the Bitcoin chart and all the back and wonderful liquidation data, I do want to kind of bring to your attention some really excellent congrats to our community members here. Saw some nice profits here, about 58% for Avalanche, 41% for Bitcoin, and XRP 47%, along with a SUI 42%. So we got some pretty good take profits there for 4 short positions that we opened within the last 2 to 3 trading days. So it was a really nice profitable situation. So quick congrats to that. Obviously, if you're new to the channel, I ask you, like, subscribe, and follow, enable alerts too, so you can make sure to stay on top of these updates that I provide for you frequently. With the exception of life events, right? Life happens. You just kind of got to deal with it and move on. So I'll try to be as positive as possible, but it will be slightly superficial for the next couple of days just because of all the crap that we're dealing with. All that being said, regardless of that fact, let's take a look here at order blocks here and just kind of give you some perspective here. Because on the right-hand side, this kind of tells us where we have the largest amount of positions, buy orders and sell orders. If you saw on Sunday, my analysis from Sunday, there's a lot of buy orders down at that initial support before the price totally dumped, and that level held pretty well. I think it was 115,300 mark. That level held for a little bit, lost and continued lower, but mainly because we saw a pretty big order block there. So that being said, 112,000 as a rough estimate. If you just kind of average out 111.8 and to 112.1, that's the area of support for us based on interest there. That's basically open interest in a lot of ways. Same thing too with selling as well. We can see 114,000 is heavily guarded there. There's the most amount of positions there wanting to sell at that area. So that's kind of the initial ranges there, kind of looking at that. And of course, this order book here in the center kind of just tells us a little bit about just reaffirming those levels here for us. So not too much to note, but we can see a lot of buying and selling pressure here in both directions, but there are some pretty heavy sell orders. So I don't think we're quite out of the woods just yet. Taking a look at some of these coins here, just kind of give you some quick perspective. These are just candlestick, algorithmic candlestick patterns here that kind of just give us indication where we're at, where we see this harmonic pattern that played out, so to speak, for XRP with an aggressive wick all the way down to 270, my goodness. And now we're at with a bullish engulfing candle. So overall, we can see this tentative reversal is occurring. We're going to go ahead and compare Bitcoin to these altcoins, kind of see how they stack up. But so far, SUI appears to be the only one that has one of the better structures here, based on the simple fact that it's kind of, once more, it's a smaller time frame, but generally speaking, we can see that bearish type of pattern there. So it'll be invalidated if we can close above 340, but a lot of it hinges on Bitcoin. So try not to get too aggressive with long orders here today. If you do, tight stop losses and tight profit targets for sure. Definitely don't want to get too crazy. Looking here at the GC, that's probably what I'm just going to call it from now on, because it's funny. Anytime I mispronounce the word Gaussian, I apologize. I haven't looked it up yet. I get some comments below, so I guess it's good for the comments, but nonetheless, we're looking at the old GC here, and we're testing the upper band. That's consistent with a 50-day SMA here as well on the 3-day time frame. So generally speaking, these are mostly positive signs. However, we do have somewhat of a divergence here, basically an MACD FU, as I like to call it, where the price action rejects off that upper band there and effectively just tells us that we're probably going to continue lower from a momentum standpoint. But we are starting to compress here too in this range, right? So it's not like we're in a position where the price action is just going to shoot up or down because of it. The 3-day time frame tells us that we still have a lot of support in this previous channel. Once again, 106,000 that previous level. And then more locally, we can see 109 was also one of those areas. So to kind of make it a little easier for you, that's kind of the range of support that we have. You could just round up and say 110. So 110,000 to 107 as a close approximate. 107 to 110 is that range there. So obviously that'd be a good place to consider adding to your position, but on the same accord, it's way too early to tell. I don't recommend just blindly buying that, specifically more so with leverage. Now, spot bags, different story altogether, but a lot of folks are averaging in as the price goes down here. So it's really up to you. Now, take a look here the last 24 hours. With liquidation, we can see 100 and I'm going to round up and say 112,000 and then roughly 114,000 above. So which one are we closer to? We're closer to 112,000, so that seems like a more distinct probability for us. All right, if we take a look at the last 30 days, though, we can see that there is a pretty significant chunk once more at 114. It's kind of more so that macro level. Then we got 111.5 as the next closest large area of liquidation. But the key takeaway here is there's more liquidation on the downside than the upside, therefore reinforcing continuation lower because this is a bearish trend and we got to treat it as such. That's the concept. All right. Take a look here at liquidations to kind of give us perspective in the last 24 hours. Ethereum has roughly a 2-to-1 ratio for longs versus shorts getting liquidated. That's pretty standard. Others approximately the same, maybe 2.5 to 1. And if we look at Bitcoin, it's basically a 3-to-1 ratio. So it does tell us that even though altcoins are pulling back, they're pulling back, with a 2-to-1 ratio versus a 3-to-1 ratio. So it implies a positive pairing with Bitcoin in the overall sense, essentially letting us know that while altcoins are pulling back, they're not pulling back quite as hard as Bitcoin. And usually that's a good sign for altcoin season. So let's see if I can take a look here at the backend data, kind of let us know roughly where we're at with liquidation, just kind of from the map here. Now we can kind of see that we are traveling into fear territory. So this is oftentimes good place to buy, right? Now, do you buy every single dip? Probably not. We're not all Michael Saylor, right? But on the same accord here, we have our fear and greed index kind of letting us know that we shifted gears to a bearish mindset. And that's generally when you want to consider buying, not necessarily for high leverage long positions, more so adding to your spot bag as the price goes down. That's kind of the concept there. But either way, we have more shorts than longs above the price action, which essentially tells us that shorts are, yes, in control, but they are susceptible to getting short squeezed out here soon. We also have some fundamental catalysts sometime today. I'm not completely up on it. I saw like kind of in the comments yesterday through our community that there is like a big announcement here for Donald Trump sometime today on Tuesday. I think it's coming up, probably even going to be released by the time you watch this. And the whole concept is that it's just supposed to be like a large announcement. It may not even be crypto related, but just know that with those fundamental catalysts and the price already on its way back down, the likelihood of like an instant recovery straight back up is pretty low. So I would not expect the price just to pivot and bounce here. But once more, we are pretty well overextended. However, look at this here. Large positions here, large whales, they're really tapering off on their positions. In other words, they are no longer taking a lot of trades, which implies that they are not buying these dips. And we need them to buy the dips. So that's generally unfavorable. We can see here too, even though we are seeing a little bit of an increase, these are $100,000 plus in volume trades. It's still pretty low, right? So I don't really feel comfortable seeing this dip here and wanting to take a long position. I know I was talking for roughly a week or almost two about 113,000 being that desirable range. You got to understand though, you don't just jump right into the first attempt to break that level or the first attempt to bounce off that level. I always have areas that I'm interested in, but I don't always take the trades because you want to do your due diligence, which is what we're doing now. But the concept remains the same. 113,000 is that heaviest area of open interest. We can see that here on the right-hand side. This is 1 month of open interest. And it's also a previous level that was retested multiple times as a resistance that should be holding as a support. But once more, if we can't close or reclaim above that level, it's going to be a difficult ask to want to take a long at that range. That being said, liquidation and short delta is at 10 billion, so we got 10 billion more shorts than longs. And if we look at the liquidation here, this is the last 7 days, it kind of just tells us 110,000 to 111,000 is that next area of liquidation. So let's take a quick look here and clarify. Let's just double check the monthly and see if there's anything that's maybe a little bit more telling here. And we look at the monthly, we can kind of see that there's still some pretty big chunks, even as low as about 108,000. But Simply put, the local area of liquidation is between 110 and 111. All right, that's kind of where we're at there. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look here at the actual chart and just kind of recognize that there was a head and shoulders, albeit a pretty ugly head and shoulders. This was here available, or not available, but I posted this on Sunday, kind of giving you an indication that we have a bearish type of continuation potential. That's half the reason why we opened a 20x leverage short position for Bitcoin, which isn't really a common characteristic for me. I like to only max out at 10x leverage, but it just felt like there was something going on, and that just how weak the market was. Specifically, I know it was a weekend, it was a Sunday, but the truth is there was a lot of indications that we're going down. So all that said, daily time frame here for Bitcoin, we can recognize we're now below all moving averages. That kind of reinforces resistance in the 114K range. So we're seeing some confluence here, right? We're seeing like those order blocks, as well as, just general structure at the 114 as the next potential resistance. So that's what you call confluence in the industry, folks. That would also probably put us at 50 on the RSI if we reclaim or try to push towards 114. So if you're considering a long position, a really tight long would be appropriate, or waiting for a short at 114 may be a better call. It really just depends on where you're at. I'm not proposing you take a long right now because everything is pointing down. We've shifted momentum. We are underneath the 50 in the RSI, stochastics pulling back, and money flow index is below the RSI. Those are all signs you don't want to trade along into, right? So once more, even though I've been talking about 113 being a very good, interesting level, it would have been a lot different if the price came down and kind of hung out above 113. We're hanging out just below 113, reinforcing that as a potential resistance, okay? So it's important for you to kind of wait and be patient in this industry, or this market rather, because the crypto is designed to liquidate you. That's really just the way it is. All the odds are against us. So that's why I like to kind of give my traders some food for thought, some good insight, and hopefully some good risk management. And the good risk management right now is basically don't trade. That's a simple way to understand it. But I would just say wait for either this liquidation level to be swept, or pushing to 114 with that that fake out, so to speak. But if you can see here, 113,000 has the 200-day SMA hanging out right there with it. And if we look at 50 on the RSI, we can see we haven't even come close to reclaiming it. So the 4-hour time frame is still very bearish, right? So there's not a lot of things here. Even if the price goes straight up from here, there's no indication, no realization that you should take along with confidence, right? So that's the good thing about technical analysis, that even though the price goes up, you know in your heart that you shouldn't have taken that trade and you didn't, because you did the right thing. Yeah, it's all about doing the right thing in trading, because in the end, that will almost always save you, okay? You're going to miss a lot of opportunities, though. There's no doubt about it. But that's kind of where we're at there for Bitcoin, the overall sense. There's no hidden bullish divergence, no Elliott wave theory here to really tell you what's going to happen. The truth is everything's pointing down, and we want to presume it'll continue down, but just know 111 is that key level support range based on liquidation, 111, 110. We're also seeing some confluence there with our macro fib levels too. So I think we're going to see one more leg down to the 110 to 111 range, and at that point, I'd be much more interested in considering a long. But between now and then, patience is key. So what are your thoughts? Why don't you comment below? Let me know. Are you on the same page as me, or are you totally opposed? It's okay. There's no wrong, no wrong answer there. But I love to get your feedback. All right, let's go ahead and take a look next at the next series of altcoins. Quick heads up to my traders, make sure you take full advantage of this offer here from Bitunix. There's a significant deposit reward bonus, as well as a $16,000 individual reward for just trading on the exchange. If you use my link to register in the past, you're automatically eligible. If you use my link to register now, you're eligible for all future trading bonuses and competitions. Check out the links down below for more information. All right, folks, let's go and take a quick look here at Ethereum. And this worked out perfectly for a lot of our community members here who are trading this. They were able to short at that $4,500 mark and hit some pretty solid profit there. While we did miss the boat on this one here, I wasn't able to get an entry in. There was every sign that we're going to break this pennant, or sorry, this is more so a triangle pattern, which is generally bearish based on its current structure. So we'll discuss what to look for moving forward here. We may be starting a bearish type of flag pattern, but I think it's far too early to tell. I do personally feel that Bitcoin is due to continue a little bit lower based on what we've already seen here so far. So let's take a quick look at the back end here for, Ethereum and a few other coins here, and kind of just see where we're at, because the general structure, once more, we had that heavy open interest area of 4,500. That's obviously gone now. Let's take a look here at the last 7 days, kind of get some perspective on where we're at here. So let's see if we can zoom in here a little bit. there is not a lot of open interest activity here, basically just implying we have significant weakness in this coin. We can see 18 billion in short liquidation delta. Not something you want to try to long against. And if we take a look at the liquidation, there's a small chunk here locally, but not a whole heck of a lot. This is last 7 days liquidation. The only way to really truly identify the key levels would be just say to zoom out to the macro and just kind of give you some perspective here that there is still liquidation, pretty heavy amount, down as low as 4,000 to 3,900. So those are some areas that could very well get hit. But unfortunately, anyone that had a liquidation event close to 4,000 just got hammered. Oh, that's a bummer. But that's pretty much standard par for the course, folks. Market makers did their thing. Now the likelihood of them pumping the price action up moving forward is quite high. All that being said, I don't expect significant results from this coin here. We're seeing fairly low volume, and just generally speaking, this is not a good structure. So let's take a look at the daily and just kind of recognize majority of coins are going to look fairly bearish, but when we look at the macro, that's where we got to kind of see if there's any indifferences. For the most part here, though, we can see that we are below all moving averages. We're at an 8 on TD sequential, kind of letting us know we've been moving for 8 days straight in the same direction, which does eventually pivot and bounce at some point, but we're not even close to an overextended state according to our RSI and money flow index. So while MFI is a little bit above the price, that does kind of imply potential bottoming pressure here, or bottoming out rather. Less buying or selling pressure. We can see stochastic swinging down, MACD diverging. There's really not a lot of reasons here to take a long. Speaking of long, if you were to consider taking a long, 4,300 is that macro point of control. So a lot of resistance there. So if you do insist on a $100 long from 4,200 to 4,300, secure profit somewhere between now and that level, because the likelihood of rejection at that range is pretty high. It's also our local bottom here too, and we got to presume that's going to work as a new resistance. Okay, so those are kind of just things to kind of pay attention to. Is it an exact science? No, not even close. But let's take a look at the 4 hours, see if there's any indifferences here. Generally speaking, when you're looking at the 4-hour time frame, you can see MACD's trying to swing up here. We are losing that oscillation to the downside, and we did hit as low as 20 on the RSI, and money flow index went even lower. So the truth is we shouldn't see much more selling pressure from Ethereum because there's not like a lot to sell. But the overall concept here is that it could still continue lower. It's probably best to presume it will. But I wouldn't be surprised if we see a rally back up to 4,300 for a little dead cat bounce to essentially give people the false indication that we're back on track, and we go right back down again. So that's the concept there. So that is essentially the overall sense for Ethereum. Not the strongest coin to consider trading right now. In fact, I think we're going to probably say the same thing for Solana here at this point, but it does have a better macro structure here with its 0.618 fib level and the 200 SMA below the price. Those are usually things you want to consider as support. And if we look here, of course, we see 210 as that macro support range here based on open interest, but obviously liquidation short delta is upwards of 6 billion. So there's still a lot more people trying to short this coin. We have some late shorts here, essentially, that may get swept here. So we might see a rally back up to 230. That's generally the concept there. But once more, we got to presume that the previous support level, which is this guy right here, is going to be the new resistance. So 230 and some change, 231, 232 is likely going to be the new resistance level. So I'd be interested in a short consideration there. But I'm not going to just set that limit order on a high leverage trade in the blind. That's not what you do. You wait and you evaluate, and you make sure you trade when the coin gets there, and make sure you understand where Bitcoin's at the time. Okay, so if Bitcoin has some significant turnaround, and we can see our differences there with Bitcoin dominance is shifting, then we might be in a better position there. So for right now, though, at this point, we are entering our support range once more, just to kind of clarify our previous high, roughly here at about 216. Gives us confluence here and confirmation that this may be the tentative bottom for us, okay? So a lot of times you'll see a bullish backtest of previous resistance levels before the price legs up again. So Solana has a great chance to pivot and bounce from here. Just recognize 230 is a resistance, so if you're gonna take a long, securing profits between now and then is an appropriate consideration, all right? Just before we take a look at the next altcoin, I want to recommend you consider trading with Bitunix. If you use my link to register down below or have in the past, you'll always be eligible for future trading competitions, but this one is awesome. It's probably the best one I've seen yet, with a full-on $16,000 individual prize pool, as well as a collective prize pool as well for the top 30 traders. Be sure to check out the link down below for more information. Let's move on to SUI. This one, actually, I just want to start with the macro structure here and let you know that it is still looking pretty good in the overall sense. It hasn't broken its it's bullish type of pattern here, right? So this is a bullish pattern in general, just letting us know that we're starting to squeeze and compress. Since we derived from the downside, we're more likely to continue to the upside. It's once more just a pattern. You don't trade patterns alone, but if we can maintain above this 320, 330 range, I think there's a solid consideration for the price to go higher. Let's take a look though at the back end and kind of just get some perspective on where we're at. So looking here at SUI, we can recognize on the right-hand side, 350, 340, and 360 did not hold as support, which is common when you have a mega dump, right? So that really doesn't matter too much. What it matters is the fact that we got to treat those as resistances now, all right? And we also have liquidation short delta, now at 600 million to the downside. That's generally construed as a bearish sign, in case you didn't know. And we take a look at the macro. Let's see if there's anything left to the downside. I feel like we're getting closer to a larger range. Oof, this is bad. 260, 280, and $3 are like the super mega chunks here for SUI. These are more recent. Keep in mind. I mean, they've probably progressed over the last week or two. But generally speaking, there's a lot of belief, I feel, that $3 will hold as a support, which is pretty realistic. But this is a falling knife effect in a lot of ways. We're ranging into this range after we fell pretty hard. The likelihood of a leg down is still quite high. Right. So generally speaking, what you're going to be looking for here on smaller timeframes is these bearish type of channels. So hypothetically, we cannot break this channel and break above our point of control roughly at 340. We're probably going to go lower. So SUI does feel like it has propensity to go lower based on what we've seen so far. Let's take a look at the daily and just kind of recognize a few things. Obviously, we're below our moving averages, but there is a 200 SMA hanging out right here with this ascending trend. There could be something there. Also, furthermore, we're under 50 in the RSI, MACD and stochastic swinging down with money flow index trailing behind. When I see that, I generally construe this as positive, but mostly negative. I know it sounds weird, but we want our money flow index to be above the price action. And of course, it's going to give us a false representation with our RSI being below 50 because we just dumped pretty hard. So the overall sentiment here is still good. It's just not great. So I would not recommend taking a long just based on the simple fact that we have good momentum to the downside. It's a precipitous situation. The likelihood of further downside is quite higher because of this. Just make sure you watch it close if you consider shorting, because I think it's still a very high risk short if you're going to consider doing so, but it's a much higher risk long if you're going to try to take a long. So just recognize the odds are not in your favor. May the odds never be in your favor if you're considering a long position, just based on the simple fact that there's too many things above the price indicating that we are not in good shape. So to clarify, I think the best thing to do, I mean, if you look at this structure here from this is about a month's worth of trading here, we can see a lot of support or resistance at 350 and previously 360. So between now and then, 350 and 360 need to be treated with respect. And the truth is, if we see those ranges, there's a lot of confluence, a lot of indication that this local bottom here, in fact, let's make this a little bit easier for you to see. This local bottom of 350 is probably going to be our new top, our new high. So hypothetically, we break this channel to the upside. Don't get it too twisted. We're probably not in good shape until we pass that level. So we need a daily closure over 350 that would put us in a very good situation, a better situation, perhaps with a bullish engulfing candle. I think that's a pretty tall order right now, but for lack of better terms, we should expect to see most of these coins see at least a dead cat rally. In other words, the price is going to be coming up here to their previous support levels, and we got to see if they're going to test and hold as a resistance. Between now and then, securing profits is an appropriate consideration. Make sure you do that. So if I do consider any longs today, I would make sure that they are tighter and they are not ones that I just set and forget and walk away as if it's no big deal. Speaking of which, here, let's take a look here at XRP last and just double check this descending trend here, or more importantly, this massive pullback. We had a significant overextension. When you see this green bar here, this is our price moving average percentile range. It's a unique coordination, but basically it just takes the overall volume based on a shorter period of time and tells you when there's a massive overextension. So we saw that obviously with the candle wick to 269 to sweep all that liquidation. Let's double check that here. It's going to be interesting to see here. Take a look. First of all, simple way to understand an open interest and just macro / psychological resistance is at $3, right? So we see a ton of confluence at $3. Basically 3 to 310 is that significant resistance range for us. So it's going to take a lot of volume to get through that, or Bitcoin to successfully remove its head from its ass, as I like to say. That being said, 1.8 billion in short liquidation delta on XRP, that's a pretty significant sell wall. And we take a look here as well. Oh my God, look how uncanny this is. A perfect sweep of almost every last ounce of liquidation at 267, and then the price comes right back up as if it never happened. So who do you think bought this dip at 260 to 268 to 275? It's not people like you and I. If you caught that, congratulations. Good job. You got lucky. But it's not luck when you are controlling the market now, is it? All right, so let's take a look here at the daily time frame. Recognize a few things here. First of all, I just want to kind of highlight a few macro structures here, just give you some perspective. 275, I think I talked about this previously, but forgot to include it on the charts. 275 is a very close approximate of support. We've seen that level tested 3 times now without continuation lower. While we're wicking down, getting those aggressive wicks, we can see 275, 280 is a highly sought after range. So that's good. That's ultimately positive. Just keep in mind, we are in a triangle type of pattern here, or like a type of descending channel. So the truth is here, if we come down to say, to this level here of 275 again, it may not actually hold. We may actually see may actually see it break open. I think it's less likely with this coin being, just how crazy and nonsensical a lot of the traders are, because the influencers are also such. We're seeing that potential for a lot of buying just out of nowhere. Not saying it's not warranted, but this coin is heavily guarded in a lot of ways, and market makers, they know that, so they're going to push it even further. All that being said, the whole point of this is that we do have bearish divergences on almost every single circumstance here, kind of letting us know that further downside would make sense. But I'm also leaning more towards $3 being retested before we see that. It would make perfect sense for the price to come up to that point of control, reject out at this level, and continue a bit lower. So that's kind of what I'm expecting to see, something along those lines. So if you're considering a tight long would make sense. But once more, let's double check to see if it is even practical. Because this coin, among the other ones we've seen at so far, or looked at so far, we can recognize it's performing very well. It's going higher with less selling pressure. And the concept here is that, if Bitcoin can reclaim that 113 or higher K range, then I think XRP will rally. Now, my thoughts are that 114 is going to be that solid resistance for Bitcoin. It has a small margin for continuation higher. So we could pretty much presume the same here. We're probably going to see $3. If we see $3, we can expect a rejection there. That's the concept. Once again, psychological resistance. 4-hour time frame also reflects that we are in decent shape, but not awesome. In other words, money flow index needs to be higher than the RSI to feel confident, but MACD converging here with the price action breaking through its local high. In other words, if you kind of zoom into a hourly time frame, you can see this previous high wall is now working as a new low. So I do think we're going to see a bit further of a continuation being above our local point of control, or lower time frame point of control. So those are all things I like to look for potential reversals. While I think that XRP should continue a little bit higher here moving forward, I think we need to be very aware that $3 to 310 is that solid resistance range, and that generally speaking, this coin is performing a bit better. But if Bitcoin cannot continue to reclaim this 113K range, majority of these coins will pull back. So those are my 2 cents. What are your 2 cents? I want you to please comment below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow. Obviously, enable alerts too, and join us over on Twitter, Telegram, and Discord if you want to become a better trader. I've also got a trading academy, community, and signals group. Future reference again, if you want access to these, feel free just to reference cryptocash.tech. But to my traders right now, make sure you pay attention. I mean, I give you firm indications of why I plan to take trades that I take. And this is basically a short consideration, kind of letting you know that, hey, this is a short I want to take. Short with AVAX too. Everything that we've taken trades with here recently, it's all there so you can learn from it. So please understand that is there for you. Don't overlook it. Okay. All right, cool. Well, those are my thoughts there. What are yours? Look forward to working with you. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks again for being an amazing part of my life. We'll see you again tomorrow. Take care.